Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Simplifying Data Protection Management in the Cloud. On today's event, you'll learn how to achieve data protection nirvana with Veeam and Iland. Today's event is brought to you by Iland and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is David Davis, and I'm excited to be the moderator on today's event. Now, before we jump into it, we've got a little bit of housekeeping that we need to cover. First off, we want this to be a very educational event. So we've got our expert presenters who I'll introduce you to here in just a moment, but we want you to use that questions box there in the GoToWebinar control panel as much as you'd like. If you have questions about data protection, disaster recovery, moving to the cloud, cloud migration, now is the time to ask, and we'll have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of today's event. We also have some handouts available for you to download there from the GoToWebinar control panel. You can check out, the first one is called 9 Keys to a Pain-Free Cloud Migration. Make sure you download that. The other one is Hyperscalers for Disaster Recovery as a Service, Making the Right Choice. So make sure you download those papers, share them with your friends and colleagues. We also have a $300 Tango gift card to give away at the end of today's presentation to one lucky attendee. So make sure that you stay tuned for that prize giveaway. You can find the legal prize terms and conditions at our website, events.actualtechmedia.com. And with that, I'm excited to introduce today's presenters. First off, you'll hear from Mr. Justin Augat. He is a Vice President of Product Marketing at Iland. We're also joined by Mr. Will Urban, Senior Cloud Technologist at Iland. Thank you, presenters, for joining us today. So before we jump into it, let's talk a little bit about what you're going to learn on today's event. First off, you'll hear how Iland takes a different approach to cloud-based data protection. After that, you'll learn how Veeam and Iland have simplified the management of all your data protection strategies. And finally, you'll get a live demo of Iland's data protection platform, the Secure Cloud Console. And with that, I'm excited to hand it over to our first presenter. Justin, take it away.
All right, David, thanks very much. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes, sir.
My computer's doing that sticky keyboard thing here, so that's why it looked like my animations were like right behind yours. So I appreciate your patience with that, and I look forward to talking to everybody today. Real quick, folks, my name's Justin Augat. I look after product marketing at Iland, as David said. I've been at this company now for going on a year. I came from Dell Technologies, and I've been in the industry for quite a while now. I know many of you probably on the call from previous lives. And I'm joined here by my colleague, Will Urban, who's our Senior Cloud Technologist. He can give a little intro at his section a little later on in the presentation. And together, we will be presenting Simplifying Data Protection Management in the Cloud. As many of you already know, data protection in the cloud has been a very hot topic over the last few years, and especially so in 2019. Today, more companies are reviewing their data protection and business continuity strategies because they know the risk of data loss has grown significantly over the last few years. And this isn't because of natural disasters or cyber threats, though unfortunately both of those are on the rise, but rather it's because our IT environments have become so much more complex over this time with public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, on-premise environments, SaaS. The data is living everywhere. And so even administrative tasks that were once considered uncomplicated or even simple are now at risk of data loss through accidental deletions, unintentional overwrites, and other human miscalculations. We are all, after all, we are human, and we do make mistakes. The other thing that's driving data protection services, and building on that first point, is that because the IT landscape has become so much more complex, companies are moving more of their data center environment to the cloud for the efficiencies that they provide to the business. At this point, most of us have heard about digital transformation. And so some companies now are moving specific applications and strategies, just like data protection, for example, to the cloud. Some want to avoid data center expansion. Some want to avoid a full second data center investment. And others want to get out of the data center business altogether. So there is pressure to do it. Let's talk a little bit about what we are seeing in the industry. Let me just build this out. Great. So here's a quick look at a recent survey by IDC. So there's no question that when we look to both consumer behavior and many born in the cloud companies, including those that are going public or about to go public, we just saw Uber and Lyft and other disruptive companies coming public in the last few weeks. The cloud is really driving a lot of the ability for these companies to have that competitive advantage, the efficiencies that companies have that have been able to improve their cost structures, improve their competitive positions, helping them be disruptive, and ultimately focus on innovation, revenue driving activities. Okay, so the name of the game here really is to improve efficiency. So for us, that means these traditional companies that have data center and hardware ownership, they're still maintaining hardware, they're still maintaining the real estate, the data center, power, cooling, floor space, paying for all those things. You know, these are an opportunity to improve that efficiency and ultimately repurpose these teams on application development and other revenue positive activities. So the survey that we're looking at here shows that over 50% of executives surveyed are concerned about their business being disrupted by smaller, more agile startups. And again, you know, there's no shortage of examples here that we could all call out. 50% of respondents, almost 50% of the respondents, said their board is challenging them to make progress with a digital strategy. So this includes cloud, it includes social media and analytics and other IT strategies, but ultimately the goals are the same: reduce costs, in some cases provide insight, but help companies get to innovating. What's their next plan? What's that next phase? You know, what is the next you know, revenue driving activity that they're all focused on? And getting away from these sort of inefficient activities, especially within IT, helps us repurpose those dollars and those resources to get there. Finally, almost 75% of CFOs are saying that cloud has had a demonstrable impact to their business, both in terms of reduced cost and more favorable cost structures. In other words, when you move from CapEx to OpEx with cloud, you're no longer required to put up that upfront investment, that significant, you know, dollar amount that ultimately is amortized or depreciated over several years. So this immediately frees up cash flow for other investments. So to sum up, in general, companies are under pressure to transform to the cloud, and for good reason. Number one, they want to improve the economics and the efficiency. So again, no upfront hardware and software costs, no upgrades, you know, reduced administrative staff, no more data center power, cooling, and floor space costs. Also, cloud provides unlimited flexibility and scale. So unlimited resources without having to do much more than put in a ticket for increased capacity or better performance. Global access. So as more companies are deploying new business in other parts of the world, different geographies, they don't need to worry about where that data center is going to be located, who's going to staff it, etc. So that part of it is eliminated. And all of the above really has led to an evolving business model that's now designed to adapt to our changing environment, protect our business and mission critical data, and enable customers to innovate for that competitive advantage, right? Ultimately, what we're looking to do here is reduce costs, reduce the risk of downtime, securing the assets, meeting compliance requirements, and enabling that reduced time to market. So getting applications out faster, deploying new revenue strategies faster. So these are all possible with cloud. However, the reality is that with any new technology that's being deployed, customers still have concerns. In our view at Iland, it's incumbent upon the vendor, so in this case, the cloud service provider, the vendor, to ensure that the customer's concerns are addressed up front. So in other words, marketing over real customer concerns is never a good policy for a long-term relationship. So what we're doing here is I've actually put up the most pressing concerns that we hear as a company when we talk to new customers, things that they're concerned about. So number one is security and compliance, always number one, actually. We hear a lot about this. The question that we get from new customers and prospects is, given the need for better security in the market and for customer data and the changing laws for compliance, are you, Iland, the vendor, ready to support change at a second's notice? Will you partner with us to solve new security and compliance issues? So it's very important for vendors to understand that customers want a partner. They don't want an issue to arise and have to sign a new contract before it's remedied. That's really not a partnership, at least from our perspective. Number two, migration planning. How do we get to the cloud without a lot of downtime? How do we make sure that the cloud environment performs the same way as it did in my on-premise environment? What are the risks here? How long does it take? You know, and how do you protect against data loss and other issues? So again, with other customer uncertainty, providers need to be ready with an answer for that. Predictability of costs. What we hear is customers understand what the cloud brings from a resource efficiency perspective. They understand pay-per-use, but if the customer has a fixed budget, how do they prepare a forecast when many of the cloud providers today have so many cost variables in play? Um, many customers will respond, or vendors will respond with a link to a calculator or some sort of Excel that shows how what the prediction might look like. The reality is that the problem is that the pricing is just simply too complicated and needs to be simplified. So, and we agree with that too. So if you can't predict your cost, you ultimately do lose efficiency. And simplification here is key. And then finally, and this is where we're going to talk a little bit more about today, customers state that they want to use the same set of tools in the cloud they want that they've been using on premise. So a really good example here is VMware. If customers using VMware on premise, they're used to the tools, they're used to the setup and the configuration, they know how the network works. So moving to a hyperscaler like Amazon, does that mean a new set of tools? And then more importantly, as customers pursue different cloud services, one integrations exist to make sure that managing that environment is easier. If we're talking about data protection today, if you're looking at a number of different data protection providers, software providers, the data movers, Veeam and Zerto and others, what integration exists? So we're going to show you a lot about that. So these are the major barriers to cloud that we hear from our customers. So with that, I'd like to introduce what Iland has been doing for the last 25 years. We've essentially been working with customers to solve IT problems. And for the last 11 years, we've been focusing on these specific cloud issues that we just noted on the screen. Okay, let me go back one. So as mentioned, we've been around for about 25 years, providing a variety of IT services, all focused on delivering an exceptional customer experience. For the last 11 years or so, we've been focusing on data protection in the cloud, specifically disaster recovery, backup, and other strategies like archive. And we've been recognized by all major analyst groups for the leadership in this space. And we've received many awards from prominent software infrastructure providers like VMware, Veeam, Zerto, HPE, Cisco, and many others. So again, the partnerships that we maintain with these companies are really critical to our success, and it goes and stands to reason that when we approach customers with services, we approach them the same way. There's nothing more important than that relationship to us. So we also have a global cloud footprint, and this is especially important for companies that are looking for that geographic data protection capability for both proximity concerns, and in other words, not having your disaster site to be too close to the data production data, and for compliance concerns such as GDPR. We're connected through hundreds of providers today. So ultimately what that means is that wherever you're located, we have support for you, and we also include support locally for all our customers. So wherever you are today, you can start and or end your cloud journey with Iland. A little bit about our focus from a high level perspective. Our mission here is pretty simple. Iland has been focused on simplifying the path to data protection in the cloud for quite some time now. We've built a platform on leading, proven, and familiar technology. I mentioned VMware. So we're using VMware, for example, in all of our solutions and our services. So proven technology. We also provide comprehensive planning, sizing, and migration services right up front that help the customer move to the cloud more efficiently, reduce that downtime, reduce the cost and the time to actually getting protected in the cloud. And we also provide managed services for those customers that are looking for that extra layer of support and risk reduction with especially complex disaster recovery and or backup needs and requirements. So really, the full spectrum of services that a customer might need depending on where they're located in the world, the security and compliance requirements that they have, and their application requirements. And then finally, like with anything else, our goal here is to elevate that customer experience. Make it as close to the on-premises experience that many customers are moving away from. And we do this as a way to not get too far out of that IT comfort zone, right? So in other words, you've built something on premise that performs the way you want it to, has the security and compliance postures that you require. there's a lot of predictability there from a cost standpoint, et cetera. And so to the extent that we can replicate that experience in the cloud, we'll do it. Okay. And so that's why we're using solutions like VMware, and we're using enterprise storage from HPE and Cisco switches. And again, the whole idea is to improve the customer experience and ensure that the data protection strategy is executed on time and without any data loss. Here's our first poll question for everybody. If you want to take a second to answer this question, what is your most important driver for cloud adoption? Number one, reduce costs on secondary sites, support refresh cycles of hardware, increase confidence, reduce risk, meet security needs. And then third, work smarter and shift IT teams from reactive to innovative.
I just popped up the poll question on the screen there. If you're attending the webinar, just answer the poll right there on the screen, and we'll share the results here in just a moment. All right, looks like most everyone out there has voted. Let me share the results of this poll. All right, Justin, what do you think?
I love it. Yeah, this is lines up with what we expect. Is that number one? Yep, it's about reducing risk, improving security needs. It's just simply becoming so complicated to manage all the different moving parts of the data center these days that having a provider do it, getting those economies of scale, fits in line with essentially what we're hearing from our customers. Secondarily here, reducing costs on secondary sites, absolutely. As again, as companies are looking for that geographic protection, they're looking for secondary sites for business continuity. Makes a lot of sense. We all know the time that is spent with hardware refresh cycles, so either lift and shift or just simply migrating from one array to the next. Every 3 years, we're going through it. We all get it. Doesn't exist with a cloud. So it's really important for customers to understand that. Looks like this audience certainly does. And then I think at the bottom, I think it's great. It's 24%. About a quarter of you are saying, hey, we know that the cloud helps us work smarter and focus on less administrative tasks and more on revenue generating or innovation activities, like application development, customer experience development, things like that. So this is great to see. Great validation for what our customers are all looking for. Great. All right. So I am going to. Here we go. Let's get to the portfolio. All right, let me build this out. So again, Iland Cloud is a global cloud platform, and we have been working for years on building what we call the platform for business resiliency. So the ability to adapt, secure, and protect mission critical data. Today, our portfolio consists of infrastructure as a service for application hosting. So if you are a VMware shop and you've got existing applications running on VMware, they're virtualized with VMware, moving them to the cloud can be a effort intensive activity unless you're moving to a VMware cloud like Iland. So something to keep in mind. We'll have other webinars and other information about that specific topic in the future. You can look forward to that. We also have an archiving service. So this is for cheap and deep or long-term retention of older backups. So, today many companies are using all kinds of archiving on-site. This is equivalent to, working with an Amazon S3 or an Azure Blob Storage. In this case, we've created a different layer, different experience through extremely simplified, all-inclusive pricing. So something to look at if you are in the market for a long-term object store, again, for older backups or for security and compliance of your data. And then obviously there's the core data, the core portfolio, our backup and our disaster recovery. Iland literally made its name on providing exceptional backup and industry-leading disaster recovery solutions. And this is a course that we will always hold true, and we'll be continuing to innovate here as the leader. All right, let's build this one out here. So we focus at Iland, we focus on five key pillars here. Number one, global access in 100% SLA, 100%. So this is a contract that we write with a customer to ensure that performance and availability needs of the application are met and they're guaranteed and they're contracted with. So it's really one of those back to providing that confidence that customers need to move to the cloud. Number two here, VMware-based platform. So again, if you're running VMware today and you're looking to a cloud provider running VMware, that migration from one-to-one, from VMware to VMware, is going to be seamless. The experience that you have there around tools and management is all going to be the same, right? And so any other target environment ultimately will introduce many unknowns, which could equal time, effort, money that you weren't prepared for. So again, if you are looking for an application hosting platform and you're running on VMware today, you want to make sure that you look for a VMware-based cloud platform. Can't understate this or overstate this enough. The risk can't be understated here when we talk about the amount of time that companies have spent trying to convert their VMware environment to a different environment, like an Azure environment or an Amazon environment. Third, integrated software. So again, we've partnered and collaborated, and we've co-developed with companies like Veeam and Zerto. So these are leading data protection software providers. So ultimately, the end result here is that you can manage all your data protection services from a single location. You're going to hear from my colleague Will. He's going to walk you through a demo of exactly how Iland has built that integration with these companies, specifically Veeam. Fourth, no compromise industry and geo-security and compliance. So we look at ourselves at the forefront as being on the forefront of geographic change. So we were one of the first cloud providers to be certified by the British Standards Institute, supporting GDPR. Very proud of that, given our position, our ability to move quickly, our agility in that space. And then further to this, one of our key values for customers is we maintain a dedicated compliance team that can pick up the phone and can assist customers with their questions that they have around compliance and other security related questions in their environments. Very different from other providers. And then finally, our expert transformation services. So major hyperscalers like Amazon and Azure provide great do-it-yourself, build-it-yourself services. But because we know DR so well in the cloud, and we know the effort and the time to get it right, moving VMs to the cloud is not a straightforward thing. Iland is here to assist or do it for you, right? So a lot of flexibility there in what customers might be able to benefit from. Poll question number 2. What capabilities matter to you the most when evaluating cloud service providers? Choose all that apply. So global presence, compatibility, security, management capabilities, and technology transparency.
And I should point out that this is a multi-select question, so you don't have to choose just one here. You can choose one or multiple answers. I appreciate everyone answering these poll questions. I'm curious personally to find out the results here of this one. We've got a lot of votes coming in. Let's get a few more responses. All right, looks like most everyone has voted out there. Thank you. Let me share the results of the poll. And Justin, what's your take?
Yeah, that's these are this is great. This is good to see. So let's look at the big ones here. 63%, 63%. So moving to the cloud, what capabilities are you looking for? Well, hey, what we're saying is we want this cloud to work with some of the existing providers that we are already leveraging. Again, so we use VMware as an example all the time. We have countless numbers of customers that have come to us after trying to move VMware applications from their on-premise environments to hyperscaler like Amazon and like Azure. And so the conversion that takes place there can be fraught with risk. It can cost, and it can take much more time than people expect. And so when they come back around, they quickly realize the benefits of an apples to apples, VMware to VMware environment. So I'm not surprised by that at all. And then looking at it from a compatibility standpoint, Will's going to show just the level of economies of scale that can be had when you're able to manage your backup, your archive, your DR all in one place. And then the other 63% here, security, industry-specific security expertise. Again, if you're dealing with sensitive data of any kind, you're undergoing audits, and if you're dealing with, if you're in a specific geography that has, hardened compliance requirements, you are on the hook. Your revenue of your company is on the hook to make sure that you are in compliant, and that your posture is ready for, inspection. So ultimately, having a provider in the cloud do that for you really does reduce the risk that a company that is spreading resources thin across many different areas of functional expertise, could be strained with on an annual or a biannual basis. And the other ones here, management capabilities. Again, the business of managing storage, the business of managing servers in the data center these days, it just it's one of these things that is getting harder and harder to justify when the economies of scale and the efficiency they get from the pay-per-use environment continues to grow and expand. So this is a great quick poll here. No surprise.
Yeah, great insight. Thank you, Justin.
All right, and let me move this down. All right, data protection. Let's talk a little bit about that, what we think about it from an Iland perspective. So as we consider data protection, we have a statement here. We always expect the data protection to be seamless to implement, painless to manage, effortless to consume. It's backup, it's DR. Unfortunately, that expectation just isn't a reality. So as we mentioned, the risk of data loss to companies in 2019 is absolutely growing. But for many reasons, you can turn on the news, but reality is that most of the data loss comes from human error, and this is a result of more data, bigger files, more data, more systems, more complexity located in different locations. And so the left hand needs to know what the right hand is doing. And, oftentimes it just becomes a burden for the administrators that exist in a traditional environment to be able to look after it all. Again, moving to a data protection as a service allows those resources to be freed up and to manage other things, manage engineering teams that are building new customer experience apps, et cetera. And one of the things that we want to make clear is that the risk of the data loss has gone up, yes, but also so has the impact to the business itself, okay? So as the risk of downtime goes up, it goes well beyond revenue. So you can see here in this survey, employee productivity, loss of customers, brand reputational impact. We could all probably name a few companies that that has experienced outages and or security breaches. So what we're talking about here really are long-term, potentially fatal issues for any company that experiences significant downtime. Just isn't something that's acceptable in today's environment, let alone environments now where the barriers to entry for many industries and many companies are quite low. I can create a car company and call it Uber and have a multi-billion-dollar valuation. So ultimately the idea here is protect the business, keep it resilient, do all the things that need to be done, internally to protect that revenue and protect that reputation so that you can focus on innovation. Now, the good news here, data protection is a natural fit for the cloud, given that backup, DR, and archive have also become much more complex, as a result of that overall landscape. And so the need to be able to protect the business data, no matter where it lives, whether it's on-prem, it's off-prem, whatever type of cloud it is, cloud is really best equipped to do that, to provide that central unification of all the data protection strategies that you might have as a company. So again, that goal is to effectively centralize data protection, but really, you're only able to do this if the vendor provides the right capabilities. So in this case, let's talk a little bit about how Iland does that. Not only do we provide the capabilities, but we simplify the management of those services significantly. All right, let's just go to this next slide. So we provide a comprehensive portfolio of data protection services. Also, and for more importantly for some customers, we ensure that they work together. So if you are a backup customer and you are a DR customer and you are now protecting your Office 365 data, again, different topic, same realm of capabilities here. The core capabilities here, for any vendor and for you as a consumer, as a customer, in evaluating new cloud providers is to ensure that it's simple, that it's easy to use, it's repeatable. It's something that you can pick up once you've procured those services. It's meant to make your business stronger. It's meant to make your ability to innovate and focus on revenue producing activities stronger. So given that different data protection strategies are often used for different workloads based on the value of the data to the business, the goal is to manage it from one location. In the case of Iland's portfolio, customers can manage DR, backup, their Office 365, their archive, all from a single console. And let's just take a quick look at our console before we move to our demonstration from Mr. Will Urban. So the management of Iland portfolio happens through the Iland Secure Cloud Console. So Will is going to walk through a demonstration in just a moment. But as a quick summary here, the Secure Cloud Console is designed for self-service and centralized management. But we've also improved on it significantly over the last few quarters to include improvements to visibility and configuration across all cloud infrastructure components. So essentially enabling customers to ensure that they get updates on all their hardware and their software. Integrated recovery runbooks, orchestration and automation. So if you are looking to deploy DR, again, these capabilities provide performance and administrative efficiencies. So ultimately, we're looking to help reduce the likelihood of error in the event that you do need to recover your data. Real-time usage, billing, compliance reporting. Again, this is all good for long-term planning, that predictability we talked about. Integrated alerting and monitoring, built-in support and ticketing, product feedback. We actually make decisions based on some of the feedback that we receive through the console, so customers are able to talk to us directly. And then finally, RESTful APIs and SDKs for extensibility. So in this space, customers can utilize our console's capabilities with some of their own applications. Okay, so with that, let's do one more poll, and then we're going to talk about the product demo with Will.
So the poll question here is, are you using any solution to protect your virtual environments, VMware, Hyper-V, and you can choose more than one answer. So this is a multi-select question. So we have cloud backup, offsite tape storage, secondary site replication or backup, disaster recovery, or none of the above. All right, looks like we've got some responses coming in. Let's get a few more responses and I'll share the results. All right, looks like most of the audience has voted. Let me share the results with you. And Will, Justin, what's your take?
DR is right up there, secondary site for backup. That's great. So, we live in a world where, VMware, Microsoft, hypervisor environments are really, ruling all that we do. We make decisions based on them. I was actually talking to a customer this week who was, they were a former customer of a big data protection provider. And when it came to virtual machines, this provider, and it's probably many people on the call have heard of these and know what this problem I'm about to talk about is they weren't able to back up a VM, a whole VM. So they were basically having a problem with granularity, right? So they were able to get file-based protection and recovery, but if they lost a VM or the VM became corrupted, they essentially had to rebuild it, which is hugely effort intensive. So to me, when we're talking about using, a solution to protect virtual environments, backup, offsite tape, whatever it is, it's all dependent on how important that VM is to you, right? So if you're doing DR, that means it's really important. So it looks to me in the survey that DR is the highest one, which implies to me that people are putting a huge amount of emphasis on VMware and Hyper-V environments, their mission critical applications and data, and so they can't risk having more than a few minutes of downtime. They need that dedicated disaster recovery service to immediately flip over in the case of a data loss event. So great poll.
All right, back to you, Justin.
And now we're going to go to the product demo with Will. And Will, you're going to take the control of the ball here, right?
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks a lot, Justin. Thanks everybody for joining us. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Let me start that and show my screen. So my name is Will Urban. I've been doing disaster recovery, data protection, business continuity for a very, very long time. I may have even run into many people throughout my various lives doing this. From the old tape drive days to robotic libraries to SAN-based replication and now with the cloud. And so a lot of the things that Justin talked about are really, really important. And it's actually an awesome time because we've seen kind of this shift. Back in the days, you had, array-based replication, and then you had to fail over virtual machines, and you brought them up, and then you had to scan HBAs, and you had, some semblance of run books, and then you also had backups with tape robotic libraries that you're shipping off to other sites. And, cloud just kind of solves a lot of those problems. And The next part of that is not only is cloud solving the technical hurdles of this stuff, but you want to be able to manage it and maintain it and have visibility and all of this stuff, because it's now no longer in your hands, right? I mean, you can't go to your Chicago data center and see the SAN-based replication. You can't go to the warehouse that has tape drive after tape drive, and see those barcodes and know that everything is safe, right? So cloud is kind of this nebulous thing, and so you want to have this sort of visibility and manageability that you have today, but you need it inside the cloud. And so that's kind of Iland's biggest differentiator, and our biggest solution is really just this innovative, intuitive, single management interface, to provide you with all of the things you need to manage all of your cloud assets. Justin talked about, we do disaster recovery in the cloud, we do backup in the cloud, we do object storage for long-term archival, or whatever you need object storage for. We do infrastructure as a service. So if you have your virtual machines and you're running them in the cloud, and then you're also protecting them. So all of that stuff is important, and you need to be able to see it all. So right now you should see, actually, let me move this over because you probably don't need to see this. That's actually, you guys already are seeing that. Okay, so this is the Iland Secure Cloud Console. I'm going to bounce around a couple of different panes and stuff like that. But the first thing around the secure cloud console is really about user access management, right? So as organizations have multiple tiers of administrators and things like that, you want to know that whatever platform you're using, whether it's ours or somebody else's or even your own homegrown, is you have full identity access management and you have the permissions in place, to prevent anything from happening that shouldn't happen. So here we have, let me see, let me pop over to this one right here. If I go into this is our cloud console. I just have two separate logins because I've got, a private lab and I also have our public lab. But, if you go into just regular user management, you're able to see, all of the different users, all of the different permissions. And so, the very first part of any sort of cloud-based asset is security and identity management. So everything from two-factor authentication, to different user rights, being able to see, you may not want the junior admin to be able to recover in the case of disaster recovery, but they still need to be able to see it, all the way up to someone having the ability to recover backups or actually create new users to do whatever you want, right? So fundamentally, we start with this idea that the secure cloud console is now your way of getting into the cloud, and you need to be able to treat it just like you do with all of your on-premises stuff. Identity access management and user authentication and permissions and single sign-on, two-factor authentication, all that stuff, right? So let's go into talk a little bit about what we have. So a lot of times people first kind of dip their toe into cloud-based access and cloud-based resources with backup in the cloud. There's this whole, I mean, we could talk for days around, the 3-2-1 rule of availability, where you have 3 copies of your data, and one is your primary production, another one is usually like a local copy somewhere, and then that secondary or that third tertiary copy is a air gapped offsite copy of your data. And back in the days, it was always a joke that somebody would take the tapes home and put them in their closet and hope that there wasn't a fire and all that stuff. But nowadays, when you start talking about hardware agnostic backups and the size of backups today, cloud just makes sense and it solves a lot of those problems. And so a lot of customers are really just kind of starting their cloud, I hate to say the word journey, but they're starting their cloud journey by dipping into backups. So one of the things is because you don't have visibility into where this stuff is, right? You can't go find a hard drive. You can't go, look at the properties of a drive and see what's there. You need to have that kind of visibility. So let's pop into our cloud backup section right here in the secure cloud console. Now, one of the cool things about this is you have full visibility into what you're consuming and what you're using. And now cloud backup is kind of an interesting story, right? And we can talk about how, cloud has changed the dynamics of billing, right? You're not buying a tape robot library for 5 years and 1,000 tapes and all that stuff. You're basically buying what you need now, and then when you need more, you just ask for more and you pay for it, right? It's a new consumption model that cloud has kind of introduced, and it really works well for customers because it allows them to really only pay for what they need and not have to manage anything else. So here you can see, if I had multiple locations, like if I go to this site right here, you have we've got global data centers all over the world, right? So you could be backing up multiple different places. You could have multiple different home offices backing up to different places based on geographic diversity or data sovereignty laws or GDPR or anything like that. But basically, you can see at a glance all of your different locations, and then you see how much you're consuming, and you can see all your different tenants. Now, tenants is a really cool concept that we have that allows you, whether you're an individual company or you've got multiple sub companies, or you have maybe you're a managed service provider and you're offering these services to other people, the ability to see who's consuming what is really important, because whether you're talking about, and we talk about this throughout our whole console, whether you're talking about chargeback or showback, the ability to show who's using what cloud asset is now imperative, because you no longer have hands on this stuff, right? You need to be able to go to somebody and say, hey, look, here's our bill and 50% of it is coming from this one department, so let's do something about that, right? So you can go through, and what's really cool is you can drill into any of these and find out information about how much is being stored. Now this is just on backup, right? We'll talk about some of the other stuff, but you can see backup history results. The idea being that you don't need to open up 50 different panes of management software to find out what is going on. You need to know, are my jobs successful? How much is being consumed? Where is it going? How many tenants do I have? You can set alerts based on thresholds of capacity usage. For example, you may see something where on the end of the quarter, all of a sudden your cloud-based repo blows up, and that's because somebody decided to copy an entire file server into its own self, right? And you start causing all sorts of crazy stuff like that. So there's a lot of good things that you can do with that. Now, the other good thing about not only understanding what's being consumed and the visibility into the actual like bits and bytes of what's being consumed, but the actual cost model of this, right? So right here, we have a button that says add storage. Again, one of the ideas of being self-service is you don't want to have to call someone. You don't want to have to go get new hardware. You don't want to have to rack and stack anything. You don't want any of that to happen. You just want to say, I'm running out of storage for my cloud-based backup. It's Friday, 5 o'clock. I want to push a button and I want to go home for the weekend, right? All that's capable inside this self-service portal. Now, the other cool thing is all of the billing and stuff is all shown here. And so you can see, we just started populating this right here, but you can start to see historical information about your backups, about how often you're backing up, how much space you're consuming. You can actually make predictions based on this stuff. So, if I go into, one of our other sites, you can start to see, not only am I starting to look at my backup consumption for billing, but I can start to look at other things and how they're all being combined. So for example, you start looking at, you have backups, and backups are basically storage consumption. And now one of the things to always think about with cloud-based backup and recovery and disaster recovery is, avoid those hidden costs of ingress and egress bandwidth, right? Just go up front to your provider and say, hey, is this included or not? Do I have to pay for every byte that I transfer? Sometimes ingress is free, but you want to recover that VM, well, now you're going to pay for it. Thankfully at Iland, it's all included and you don't have to worry about that stuff. Obviously, that's why I'm going to tell you that. So when you start thinking about going from backups to other types of solutions, whether it's infrastructure as a service, it's disaster recovery as a service, that billing and that visibility kind of carries on along with it. So now you can start to break out, well, this is how much my cloud consumption for backups is costing me. This is how much my disaster recovery is costing me. This is how much my infrastructure as a service is costing me, how much my object storage is costing me. So visibility into billing all from within the same console, and the ability for showback and chargeback is very, very important as you move to this cloud type situation. So, once most companies start to dip their toe in with cloud-based backup, then they start to say, oh wow, this is awesome. I really need to start working on my disaster recovery initiative, and I don't have a secondary site, or I don't have like hardware for replication, or all of the challenges and the reasons why disaster recovery has been put off or suspended or halted or failing for so long. Now all of a sudden I can start looking into cloud and figuring out how I can leverage that to create this next tier of data protection, in the form of disaster recovery. And like Justin was talking about, a backup is a backup, right? It's, maybe you take it at midnight, and I can go for hours on the differences between backups and disaster recovery. But a backup is just a copy of your data. Disaster recovery is the ability for you to run your organization at another location as quickly as possible, so that you limit the amount of downtime, right? If anyone's ever had to restore a file server from a backup, that's a painful process, as far as time consumed and all that stuff, versus bringing that file server online somewhere else because of a disaster, and then worrying about it and fixing it later, whether it's crypto or whatever. So once you get past billing, right, there's a whole lot of information that you can consume from our cloud console. You can see over here all of the on the left hand side, you have all your different virtual data centers. Again, you have all the different locations globally depending on what you're doing. We have all of the different virtual machines. So when you think about that whole VM concept and what Justin talked about, where you want that same like technology, you want to continue to leverage the skill sets that you have in your organization, the NSX skill set, the VMware skill set, the VMware tools, Windows, like all of that stuff. By coming to an Iland type provider, allows you to just say, okay, where's my virtual center? Well, you don't need virtual center, it's all here in the console. All the things you used to do, powering on a virtual machine, changing the firewall configuration in your NSX, it's all here because of the APIs and the customization that we've developed, to run it, and it's all managed through this one single portal. Now, once you start thinking about disaster recovery, you start thinking a lot about, it's not just bringing the data over, right? So there's the idea of replicating the data and all that, but now you have to be able to kind of orchestrate and automate the process. If you've got 5 virtual machines, it's pretty easy to go in here and click on a virtual machine and say power on up, you're good to go. But when you start thinking about I've got 50 virtual machines or 100 virtual machines, that automation aspect, that recovery process starts to become a burden on you, and you want something that's repeatable, you want something that you can control and you can manage. And again, the Iland Secure Cloud Console does that all for you. So what'll happen is, as you start replicating virtual machines to the cloud from your console, you can see all of the different virtual machines that are being replicated. And then you can start to create what we call runbooks, and you can have protection groups and recovery groups. And basically what you're trying to do while nothing is broken is configure your entire disaster recovery initiative and process. So you may say, here's my tier 1 applications. You've got different runbooks, you've got different recovery groups. So you can say, maybe I've got my tier 1 apps, and I've got my tier 2 apps, and I've got my file servers, and my tier 1 apps have to come on first, and then my tier 2 apps have to come on, and then I can turn on my file servers. And you may not need to fail over everything at the same time. So you have the ability to start to encapsulate all of the different assets that you have within the console, so that you can now automate it, because that's the next step, right? So again, all from within here, you can start to create those plans based on what you're trying to accomplish. Disaster recovery, you just want to be able to push a button and have everything come online. So over here we have this failover wizard, and within the failover wizard you can select whether it's a live or a test. And this is another huge benefit to cloud-based disaster recovery solutions, is the ability to non-disruptively test your application failover, your disaster recovery plans, and automate the entire thing from start to finish, and not have to worry about this. Like, I remember back in the way long, 10 years ago, we would shut down entire sites, and we would go and we would bring up the SAN based replica, and we'd rescan the HBAs, and we'd register the virtual machines, and we'd bring them online, and we'd realize we forgot something, or what services stopped or didn't start, and it would take 2-3 days to test it, and then you'd bring everything back down and say, okay, well, hopefully we don't have to do this for another year, and you would just stop. Cloud and the technology that we have, kind of integrated inside of our console allows us the ability to just click a button, run the test, go get some lunch, come back, deliver a full report on everything. So not only do you have your replication, you've got your backups, you've got your object storage, which again is, if I go back to this guy right here, if I go into my object storage, here is, we're just using it for some archiving, but as one of the cloud buckets of storage, you can actually go in here and see, I've got a bunch of Veeam archive stuff sitting out here. I can make my changes to it. I can make sure that everything is visible or not visible or set to whatever. One thing that goes beyond just the technology of disaster recovery and backups, you start getting into security, and like I said, you've already seen the billing, but you start getting into security, and that was a huge thing that you guys said on the poll about how important that is to you, and it's true. When you start thinking about the cloud, the last thing you want to do is go from what you have on site as a secure, robust infrastructure to, I don't know, I think it's being protected. I think there's a firewall. I think there's malware scans and vulnerability testing and deep pens and all that stuff like that. Like, you need to know that. And so one of the things that Iland does is we've encapsulated this whole suite of security software, and then we've put it inside the console. So once again, from the same console, the same location, you can go from powering on a virtual machine to testing your failover to checking on last night's backup, all the way to how many malware pieces have been found on 150 different virtual machines as they were brought up in the disaster recovery situation, right? So the idea behind this entire quote unquote journey to the cloud is to not lose visibility, not lose manageability of what you're doing already, because if you do, you're already kind of shooting yourself in the foot. You want to be able to do the same stuff and actually do it better and make your job easier. And that's how, not only cloud, but cloud-based management software, and when done correctly, the full suite of everything that you need to be able to do all from within a single console. That's what we've been striving to do. That's what we were known for. And we've been doing it very well for a long time. I'm going to go back to the kind of the follow-up stuff. I know we've got some question and answers coming up. Hopefully this was a really good short glimpse of some of the capabilities that we have. You can go into compliance reporting, and you can go to failover reports and RTOs and RPOs and everything like that. I mean, we could spend hours and hours and hours about all of the capabilities of the console, but again, the idea is that the console is the tool that helps you solve all the problems that cloud now can do for you. And once again, like Justin said, down here you have live chat for support. You can call, and you can also submit like feedback and reports and that kind of stuff. So Justin, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and give this back to you, and then we can go through the last couple of slides, and I know we've got some questions coming, and then we shall go from there.
I'm here. Yeah, Justin, you should be able to just re-show your screen.
Did we break it? All right. We may have broken it. Let's go to, we saw there's been a ton of questions that have come in. So let me start with that. And then we'll see there's a couple of call to actions, and we can get you guys that at the very end if need be. One of the best questions that we got early on was the idea of, well, like, how long should I expect to do? Like, how long this is going to take, and how long is my downtime? And one of the coolest things about cloud and some of the new technologies is, the first thing we can do is we can actually evaluate your entire environment without any impact, right? So whether you've got 20 virtual machines, whether you've got 200 virtual machines, we run these tools that go through, and it actually catalogs everything, and it allows for you to actually say, these are my tier 1 things. This is what I'm going to move first. This is what I'm going to move second. Because it's all virtualized, all of the virtual machines are all encapsulated. So data replication of an encapsulated virtual machine can all be done while you're running live, right? So you create this first initial seed, and we have bandwidth checkers that'll tell you how long that's going to take for every virtual machine to each of our different global data centers, depending again what you need for your global sovereignty and all that stuff. And then once you do that, really it's almost, I mean, with the way technology is today, with some of the replication software that we have, it's literally the time of a reboot for you to either migrate to the cloud, bring up disaster recovery, or finish your backups, right? So the idea being that these are all non-disruptive technologies for the most part. For you to be able to implement and instantiate your backups, your disaster recovery, and your infrastructure in the cloud because of how virtualization works and encapsulation and all the underlying technologies. So, the biggest fear has always been, well, I can't go to the cloud because I can't take a week to upload all my virtual machines and, upload all my files. That's not how it works at all anymore, right? I mean, you can literally be on Monday morning still running your business and be at 30%, and on Tuesday you're at 50%, and Wednesday you're at 80%, and then Friday you're ready to push a button. You send out an email, say, hey, we're gonna reboot everything, and when you reboot, it now runs in the cloud, right? So it's really, really, really simple. So, Justin, we can see your screen. Go ahead and let's just do the last couple of call to action follow-ups, and then we'll see how much time we have left.
You got it. You got it. So why don't we start here? Ultimately, sort of summarizing what we've been we're talking about all presentation here. Data protection has become much more important for all businesses that are looking for that competitive advantage. Data protection in the cloud, specifically for companies that are looking for improved efficiencies to get out of that data center business. Leverage the economies of scale that exist within a cloud service environment for efficiency. And ultimately, for those companies that are really looking for a guide, a partner, if you will, we just want to again emphasize Iland's focus on building a partnership for the future for success. So guiding through the direction, the sizing, the planning, the migration itself, integrating with some of the the most popular data protection mover software packages out there today, helping to validate what you're doing to make sure that it does meet your needs, security, compliance, from a testing resource perspective, making sure the recovery works, and ultimately, again, we'll be with you the entire all steps of that journey, if you will, from the beginning all the way through the end. We include our world-class support local to all the different geographies. We include that with all of our services. So again, inspiring confidence in moving from a one environment, one comfort zone to the cloud. We're doing as much as we possibly can to make that transition as easy as possible and bring that confidence, so that you can get those efficiencies and move on to, more revenue generating, innovation focused activities within your business. And then we'll leave you with this slide after we actually one more poll slide. We've recently looked at our customer sat, our Net Promoter, which is NPS, and our availability. We want to leave these numbers up there. These are numbers that we're very proud of. We have thousands of customers at this point, and these are numbers that we continue to look and challenge and scrutinize to make sure that we're getting the most out of the way that we provide support. And we're doing this the same way with thousands of customers as we did when we had 50. So ultimately, again, focused on that customer experience. So here's the last poll that we have. Are you leveraging Veeam for backup at the moment? So we know Veeam is a big provider for small businesses, commercials, and enterprises, and they're a big partner of ours. We're just curious how many of you folks are using them today.
Yeah, and while we're waiting for that, Justin, I wanted to just point out we actually wrote something just recently about how Veeam has come out with their new community edition of software, which allows you to actually test their software for free, up to 10 virtual machines, both, and all of the cloud stuff is included. And Iland offers a free test drive as well. So, like all of the stuff that you've seen today, the backup console, the security, the disaster recovery, compliance, billing, all that stuff. Whether you use Veeam or not, you can literally go start downloading it, get a test drive from us, a free test drive from us, get the community edition from Veeam, and actually start running this and see, does this solve your problem? Does this solve what you're trying to accomplish with both disaster recovery, data protection, and cloud-based resources?
That's it.
Yeah, so the results of the poll came in. It looks like 30% of the audience right now is already using Veeam in some capacity for backup. 70% is not. And I know a question just came in from Tony, who was kind of trying to decide between Veeam and Zerto, perhaps. What's your take on Veeam? Is this something that you all already support? And
Yeah, so we're actually, and I wrote Tim privately, but I mean, we're actually one of Veeam's largest global cloud service providers. So we leverage the Veeam technology as both disaster recovery and backups and everything like that. We even use backup from Veeam inside of our own platform. So it's not a either or. It's not an Iland or a Veeam. It's a Veeam with Iland is what makes this whole solution work. And we also offer other solutions from other partners. Obviously this broadcast is being sponsored by Veeam and Iland, and so we want to talk about them. But yeah, everything from Office 365 backups to object storage with SOBR to backups to disaster recovery, cloud-based infrastructure backups as well. It's all built around the Veeam technology and functionality, and so that's why we're really excited to be able to have that partnership we have with them.
Yeah, and I'll
excellent.
add to that. A lot of us at both companies came from some of the the traditional data movers, the Veritas, Commvault. I spent time at EMC with Avamar, and I will tell you that a significant population of our customer base came from those providers and made the move to Veeam or Zerto actually for a very simple reason. It was around that granularity of the backups. Being able to provide that VMware based backup was critical to companies that were having, essentially have built a VMware focused or a VMware based data center, and being able to provide that backup and recovery of those VMs, having that level of backup capability was a critical. Again, for those customers that couldn't do that, they get a corrupted VM. Now they're building the whole thing over again. Just wasn't an option. So, again, we work with many providers. Veeam and Zerto have been, they've been on fire in the last few years and growing just leaps and bounds because of their ability to do data protection in those hypervisor environments. So, again, if that's something that's of an issue to anyone on the call, recommend you take a look.
Excellent, excellent. I know we're running out of time here. Before we go, I want to announce the prize winner of today's $300 Tango gift card. That is Kevin Kinzer of Georgia. Congratulations, Kevin of Georgia. We'll reach out to you to deliver that gift card. Probably the final question, I think, before we wrap up, and I'll hand it over to either one of you to answer, and that is, if someone, maybe today they have some sort of do-it-yourself backup in place, they're interested in the Iland solution. Can you kind of walk us through how they would get started? Like, what's the first step?
Sure, I can jump into that. So we actually have a full onboarding process, and it starts with, like I talked about earlier, where it's all about understanding what you have, whether it's for backup, disaster recovery, migration. We have this free tool called Catalyst that will go out and actually evaluate your entire organization, and then allow you to uh, basically isolate what you want to do with what. Like, I want to take these and I want to see what this is going to do for me for cloud-based backup. I want to start looking at these for disaster recovery for my tier one. It's also a really interesting tool because it can show you stuff that you didn't even remember you had. Like, you've got these 5 virtual machines from 2 years ago that you're not even using. Like, why would you bring those to the cloud or back them up or anything like that? So the onboarding starts with our Catalyst tool, which will evaluate and give you an understanding of what you have and what you need for the cloud. Because everybody always says, well, I want to go to the cloud. And then someone says, okay, good. How much you need? And nobody knows the answer to that. So Catalyst is the first part of that. And then after that, it's all about talking to our cloud-based engineers, and you start talking about, like, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? We are a solution-based company, and we are working to be working for the success of our customers, no matter what they're trying to do. So it could be, I'm trying to back up 5 virtual machines. Cool, let's have a talk. I'm trying to set up a disaster recovery of multi global conglomerate across 5 different data centers. Cool, we got that too. We've been there, done that. Let's show you how. And then beyond the like handing you the keys and saying good luck. You don't have to Google why that error message came up. You call us, right? You just pick up the phone, you call us. You're continuing to be there for us. So from onboarding to support, everything like that, that's kind of how we deal with everything. And like Justin said, whether it's 50 virtual machines, whether it's 1,000 virtual machines, whether you're a first customer or 10,000th, doesn't matter. Like you still get the same quality of service.
Excellent, excellent. Well, it looks like that's all the time we have on today's webinar. Will and Justin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you guys so much. And thanks everybody for joining us, and come check us out, iland.com, and you can sign up for those free trials that I was talking about earlier.
Awesome. Thank you everyone in the audience for joining us on today's webinar. For more information, visit iland.com. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks very much.